Hello, everybody. Welcome to Quantum Catechesis. I'm Father Joe Krupp, and I'm in my best black dress for today's event. Today is Veterans Day, a secular holiday, but it's also one as religious people we celebrate for a lot of reasons, namely the whole religious freedom thing, which turns out it's important to us. So a big thank you to veterans today, all those who have defended our country, whether you're a combat veteran or a non-combat veteran. You gave your time, you gave your talent, you put everything on the line, and we are so grateful. As a huge baseball fan, I do want to acknowledge today Ted Williams, right? The Red Sox, the greatest, I don't think anyone argues this, the greatest hitter in the history of baseball, who has the #1 career batting average in baseball. He's at the top of every hitting category, but I don't know if you know this, 5 years of his life, right in his prime, he gave to our country. He served in the Air Force he served as a pilot in World War II and then again in Korea. So think about his numbers. Dad always says that. What would his numbers have been? I mean, he's at the top of every list without 5 prime years. But it was important, and a lot of guys his age did that, and we're so grateful. So today, we've got a couple special guests, and I would like to take a moment and introduce them. Yeah? This camera?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, by the way, does everyone notice our fancy new setup? We were like, how do we get Joe's magnificent beauty and 2 other people?
I guess that's us,
Sorry, Bill. We're in trouble.
So, if you've watched this show from the beginning, first of all, I'm so sorry, but then you know these guys are returning guests, and we're so very blessed to have them. So first, General, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself to God's people watching the show.
Yeah, so I'm Mike Stone, a resident of Grand Blanc. I'm a recovering attorney at Warner North Cross Judd, and a recovering veteran, a retired general, and a couple combat tours, and excited to be here today with Bill and you. So
We're happy you're here, brother. Viper?
And Bill Harris, a recovering journalist, now retired, and parishioner at Holy Family, been here since 1988. And before we go any further, I watched yesterday, and you announced that we were coming back.
Yeah.
After watching yesterday, I realized the only way you can get invited back is to bring food.
This is the will of our Father in heaven. Okay, everyone, because I do get things where people are like, I think I would be a good guest, right? And they do, and I just ignore them unless there's a word in there. Cookie.
Cookies. That's Mrs.
Yeah.
Viper's cookies.
This is
this is
you
Viper's
guys.
cookies.
Okay, here's the thing. Can I tell this real quick?
Go ahead.
So we have a meeting once a month, Bill and I and a bunch of idiots, right? And we pretend we're talking about God or Jesus or something. But the key is this: every month, Viper brings Bill. I gotta call you Bill. You've been Viper for 20 years. But
That's my call sign, Viper.
right.
So.
Bill, so weird to call you that, is married to a goddess who her judgment snapped and she married him. Mm-hmm. And she makes us cookies. And I want you to look at these, and I would offer them to you, but that means there would be less for me. So we're going to put these over here. Yeah. So anyway, guys, thanks so much for being here. I think it's one of those things today where remembering veterans and what they do, it gets a little confused sometimes with Memorial Day, where we honor our beloved dead. Today is honoring the living. And if you don't mind, I wanted to tell you this right away. I don't know if you're familiar with Saint, my brain just froze, Saint Martin of Tours. He's our Catholic's patron saint today, and he was a soldier. He was a Roman soldier who had a cloak, right? They tended to wear these red cloaks depending on their rank, and he had enough rank where he had a red cloak. And he told a story about seeing a beggar by the side of the road when they were marching, and the guy was shivering and hungry. So he gave him his food, and he wrapped him up in his cloak and went back to the barracks. Do you know this story by any chance?
I've heard this story.
Yeah, and that night he dreamt that Jesus appeared to him and said, "Thank you for the cloak. I was cold." And when he woke up, the cloak was back on his bed. They took that cloak and it toured all over Europe. People were just absolutely astounded. This was something, forgive the bluntness, Jesus wore. Yeah? And in the end, it was such a big deal that they would build edifices all over Europe just to house this cloak. So it would come to your village. And back then, pre-cars, pre-everything, something would stay there for a year because it would take people that long to get there, right? And then it would move on to the next place. Well, they built these structures for it, and they called them capels because that's the word for the Roman cape, and that's where we get the word chapels.
Wow.
So fascinating stuff that on the U.S. Secular Feast of Veterans Day, we honor a soldier who gave of himself. Great stuff. Yeah, great stuff. So anyway, speaking of giving of self, I believe I understand rightly that many of our veterans are not aware of what's out there to help them. Am I saying?
You are absolutely correct.
Can you talk to us about that, General?
Yeah, absolutely correct. So let's go back 10 years.
Okay.
In Michigan. Michigan was one of, I think, 4 states without a state Veterans Affairs agency. And we had this chronic unemployment across the country. Michigan was number 1 on unemployment. Michigan veteran unemployment was super sky high. And there was a collective effort by a number of people, and I'm proud to say I participated in this with the federal VA, to get Michigan certified. But through that whole process, number one, we realized that there are hundreds of nonprofits trying to help veterans. I mean, I think we stopped counting at like 472 or something. We just, like, when you started mapping out how much goodwill is out there to help people. Number two, it was stunning because we have a good idea. I mean, today I think something like 6.8% of Michiganders have served in the military, and I always like to say their families, which creates, because the spouses serve too, and the kids serve, and everything as well to give to this. But we ran into so many people who said that, oh, I was just in the Marine Reserve, I was just in the National Guard, I was just this, I'm not a veteran. And like, wow. And I'm a lawyer, so forgive me for a second, but there's a federal definition of what a veteran is. Okay. And if you go to the VA is very complicated. Please don't blame the VA for how complicated it is. God love our members of Congress. They like to pass lots of veteran laws, which creates some complexity. So they're all well intended, but it gets very complicated. But there are different preferences and eras in service that you qualify for different benefits in the federal VA. And then at the state level, the state of Michigan has its own definition of veteran, which is broader than the federal definition. And so what you don't realize is there are veteran grants that are funded by the state of Michigan. I'll brag about the National Guard. The National Guard Association of Michigan runs a veterans program, and it works with the Michigan State Lottery, pull tabs, and the funds all go to help veterans in need. If you've got a veteran, a neighbor who needs financial help, there's a variety of sources. So the self-reporting or the lack of awareness. So what we like to say is, have you ever served wearing the cloth of your country? You're probably a veteran. You are a veteran. Just acknowledge and accept that. And then if you are a veteran and you need help, you just have to ask. I mean, there's places where you can go, like Holy Family, and ask, Father Joe for help and all that. But we like to connect those resources on a regional level. And one of the things that the state of Michigan has funded for the last decade is 1-800-MICH-VET, M-I-C-H-V-E-T. That's if you're having a crisis, you're having a problem, you just want to talk to somebody, or you want to find out whether your GI Bill can be transferred to your kids. It's a 1-800 number 24/7 you can call for help.
1-800-MICH-VET. Can we put that down for God's people?
Yes.
Oh, praise God. Because I'll tell you, General, I think I shared this with you when I was in Hudson. There was a greater number of veterans per capita than anywhere else I've been, right? And I was amazed at how much help was needed, and we were fighting and sliding and looking for a way, and then you find out, no, there's a program for this.
Yes.
We just had to get them to the VA.
Correct.
Or to some veterans associations, like, no, we can help.
Right.
I don't know anyone who didn't get help who needed it.
Right, and thank you for bringing up the veteran service organizations. I mean, there are dozens of them. Whether it's VFW, American Legion, Disabled American Vets. I mean, go to any of those places, call anybody you know, or pick up the phone number, because those organizations exist and they have staff to get you routed to the right place. And I think on Veterans Day, I mean, we talked before the show started about, you're going to talk about your father, we might talk about my grandfather at D-Day and your family members and things like that. There's so many people who served our country, and I learned this at a young age, that the more significant their combat experience, the less likely they are to talk about it.
Yes, for sure.
And so you might have a 90-year-old neighbor who's sheltered, and and if you think they might have served, just strike up a conversation. They might be in need, and they're too proud to even ask or even talk about their service or even ask for help.
Yeah, so I know. We ran into that with my mom's brothers. When Alzheimer's started to take her mind, she could still talk, but she wasn't clear what year it was or any such thing. But I remember she was sitting in a room, we were watching a movie, and I'd never heard this. I mean, I grew up at home, right, and we were all proud of our uncles. But she talked about, all of a sudden, she started talking, she was like a little girl. And she was talking about her brothers screaming all night in their sleep, right, from when they got back from World War II. And that you just didn't talk about it. Like in the morning, you gave them breakfast, you sent them out to the fields, and that was it, right? Because they wouldn't tell you. Back then, you just didn't talk about your pain. You worked, And to think now, not to be funny, but that little girl could have went down and pushed 1-800-MISH-VAT.
Yes.
And found out, here's how you can help your big brother.
Yes.
Right? Or, okay, why don't you get your big brother over here and we're going to love on him and help him.
Right.
Praise God. Praise God. Thank you. Thank you. And maybe this will be a time, if you don't mind, I'm going to jump over to the really horrible person on your right.
Carrie.
Despite all the help available to vets, they've actually told Bill, we can't help you. All kidding aside, Bill, I've been blessed to know you since I was 14 years old. And I've been blessed to call you a brother for 20-some years. I don't know.
Yeah, it's been at least 20.
My gosh. And I've always been touched by your commitment to our veterans. To me, I always say, we all have to learn to use our power well. When you were at your most powerful, if I may, how many Emmys?
10.
10 Emmys, okay? He has more Emmys than I have pairs of underwear. I said that out loud.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, okay.
It's recorded too.
Can we blame Carrie? Is that all right? Okay. But anyway, all kidding aside, you've always had such a love for veterans. Can you tell us where that came from?
Yeah. First of all, begin with me, General. I was 4F during the Vietnam War.
Right.
I was in between community college and going to Boston University. So my student deferment expired in my second year at community college, and then they called me in. And I'm ready to go because, as I'll explain in a moment, I come up in a military family. But here's Bill in the middle with maybe 100 other guys in their jockey shorts, and we're being told calisthenics, bend over, do this, stand up, do that, that, that. I go through the whole 9 yards, and all of a sudden, boom, I got 3 uniformed guys next to me. Touch your toes. Yes, sir, I'm nervous, wreck. Stand up. Go that door.
What the heck?
I'm thinking, oh my gosh. I won't go through that door on the other side. We're here to help you find employment should you wish. Not knowing what had happened. I failed the physical. It was 4F.
Oh my God.
Oh, that's hysterical.
So, and I say that with some embarrassment, and I wanted to serve my country.
Oh, yeah.
I'll say that because my father, World War II, Battle of the Bulge, and I just bring this as a dog and pony show. This is a yearbook that they used to give the veterans. Take a look at it.
Oh, this is
yeah. And number 2, and I love telling this story, it's he was in the Battle of the Bulge.
Jesus have mercy.
And one Sunday morning, He's getting a good Irish Catholic boy that he
Oh,
was.
indeed.
Is going to Mass.
Yeah.
Well, Mass at this particular moment was on the battlefield, and the altar was the hood of a Jeep.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
There's a picture of Mass with the Jeep
Oh, praise
in the
God.
field. So
Can you
Good
guys see that?
timing
That's
because,
perfect.
Yeah.
because then
Well, we like pictures, Mike and I.
Fathers-
We understand pictures.
the celebrant then asked my dad to be the server because
yeah.
my father was an altar server. So they go through Mass. Mass is over. The priest walks up and hands my dad this,
Oh my gosh.
the communion bell. World War II relic handed down to me, to my mother. We just rang that this morning at the Veterans Memorial Park, which we'll go to in a minute. But the other story that I want to talk about is my Uncle Pat,
Okay.
my father's brother. Pat was also in the U.S. Army. When he got out of World War II, as a civilian, he was assigned to be fire chief at Westover Air Force Base in Chicopee, Massachusetts, which was a SAC base.
Okay.
And as a little squeaker,
Strategic Air Command.
Uncle Pat would, bring my class, and I'd be so proud. There's my uncle in his
yeah.
fire chief uniform. And what I didn't know until now, his passing, he's been dead. Maybe he's been gone about 20 years. And you talk about families and the wives and everything. Patrick was the fire chief of a super secret nuclear installation on
my.
that base,
Okay.
and word was never said.
Yeah.
But finally, in the waning days, my aunt was in her 90s, and we went to visit her. And we, as kids, we always had this theory, and we knew that this complex was more than just a base. And I asked my aunt, outright. And this is in the early 80s, and then she confirmed, she says, yep, we were approached, we were taken to a bunker, we were sworn to secrecy, we were interviewed and all of that. So that's where I think my love of the Air Force, that's why I think I was able to jump in. So where do you want to go from here? Do you want to set up the video? Or?
Well, yeah, if you don't mind. So, folks, what we're going to do in just a minute, we're going to show you a video. But, General, are you willing to answer questions if God's people have them?
I am definitely. I think we both
Viper,
are.
are you?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So, folks, I can't encourage you strongly enough. You're about to see a beautiful video Bill made, and it's a labor of love on his part and a part of his commitment to our veterans, which isn't just words and bumper stickers, right? It's a genuine love for our veterans. And so if you don't mind, we're going to watch this video, and then any questions you may have about how to love and support our veterans, you're more than willing. And also, of course, the General's willing to do any legal questions, but those are $400 an hour. So, well, wait, 5, because I got to get my cut.
You gotta get yeah.
And by the way, my cut is the 400. Do you know that one about the doctor at the party?
No, I don't know that one.
Doctor's at a party, and he starts talking to this guy, and this guy says, well, I'm a lawyer. And the doctor's like, do you get this thing where everybody asks you questions? Like, he says, yeah, I'm a doctor, and everybody at a party has questions for me about their medical condition. And the lawyer says, oh my gosh, I used to have that all the time. People asking me legal questions left and right, but I ended it. And the doctor's like, well, how'd you end it? And he goes, simple, man. Just send everybody who asked you a question tonight a bill. And he says, they won't do it again. Doctor's like, that's genius, right? So on the way home, he's telling his wife about it. He goes to bed, wakes up the next morning, and there's a bill from the lawyer. Okay, so with that, Bill, let's take it away with your video.
Thanks, Father Joe. Happy Veterans Day, everyone. And I think it's important to point out that that is an appropriate greeting for this day. Originally called Armistice Day, it was a day to celebrate the end of World War I. The day later changed to Veterans Day, a day to thank and honor all of our veterans, past and present. Now that's in sharp contrast to Memorial Day, a day in which we say thanks and pay honor to those who gave up their lives in defense of our country. At Flint McFarland Veterans Memorial Park in downtown Flint today was actually a combination of both. During the Veterans Day celebration just about an hour ago, a name was added to the monument, that of Corporal Dale Wright, a Flint native who, in the Korean War, was listed as missing in action. His remains were just recently identified.
My mother was devastated when he went in the service.
Linda Stover was just 4 years old when, in 1950, her 19-year-old brother, Dale Wright, enlisted in the U.S. Army. Linda and her mother would never see him again.
She always blamed herself that, that he didn't come home, and she always believed he was still alive.
Dale was deployed to Korea. His unit was attacked by enemy forces in what was called the Battle of Chosin Reservoir on December 2nd, 1950. His family was told Dale was missing in action.
Her and my grandmother would see the news on TV, and it showed the soldiers in the war, and she'd say, "Oh, there he is, there's Dale."
In 2018, however, there was renewed hope that Corporal Wright's remains, after 70 years, may have been found when the North Korean government handed over what they, at the time, claimed were American remains in 55 boxes.
For the families of the 7,700 still unaccounted for from the Korean War, this first step in fulfilling this commitment has undoubtedly provided a seed of hope.
Did you ever give up hope?
I didn't actually give up hope, but I didn't really think he'd be home in my lifetime. Because, this is 70 years, I'm 75, and I thought I'm probably going to be gone before he ever comes home.
The mettle of our scientists and the capabilities of our labs will be challenged, but in the months and years ahead, they will make identifications from these remains and give families long-sought answers.
Answers that were long awaited and at times thought impossible by Corporal Wright's family, but then the phone call Linda had longed hoped for and prayed for.
I was sitting in the dining room table and I got the phone call, and they said, "This is Sergeant so-and-so from the Army," or whatever, and he said, "I'd like to tell you that we have found your brother matched the remains to your DNA." And oh my goodness, I just couldn't believe it. I just started crying.
4 months later, on August 20th, 2021, Corporal Dale Wright returned home.
When they carried him in, it just tears. Now I know he's home, and it's where he belongs. Oh, it's an absolute miracle.
So, Bill, thank you so much. And if you don't mind, a helpful thing for those who watch that, and it's a seemingly minor point. If you're in an airport or anywhere and you see service people in procession, it's best to stand, right? That was one thing.
Did you notice that?
Oh, I did. Yeah. That I could just, gosh, if my dad was there, I would have got stood up. But they were carrying a dead body, right? And so, just as a reminder, I know it seems minor, but to me, respect for the dead is so important, particularly those who died defending democracy. Stand up. stand up. But
So the postscript to that, if I could,
Yes,
as
please.
we move on, was this morning, as it alluded to, I'm a member of the Friends of McFarland Veterans Memorial Park in Mount
Okay.
Dublin, which you
yeah.
gentlemen are both familiar with. But it's one of Flint and Genesee County's best kept secrets.
Yes.
This plot of land was Flint's very first park in 1870.
Oh my
And then
gosh.
in 1951 became Genesee County's official war memorial. For those of you who don't know where it is, it's right across from the Durant.
Yeah.
It's at where Martin Luther King Boulevard and Saginaw Street come to a point. Well, this morning we added Corporal Wright's name to the Korea. Matter of fact, I'm just coming from that. So he has found his place, a deserved place of honor on the column. So thank you.
Thank you, Jesus. So I encourage you to. He found his place. I
Yes,
like that.
yes.
I encourage you all to make sure and check that out. If you're in Genesee County, I've lived in Genesee County my whole life until I got ordained. I didn't know about it. I drove by that a million times. You don't notice it, but then once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's clear, oddly enough.
1,100 plus names
Yeah.
are on the column from people who, as the general can affirm, you have to have died in combat or related to it to
Sure.
get your name up there. So there's 1,100 names already.
Bless their hearts. So, please don't hesitate to submit your questions. And if you don't mind, then I've got a couple for you. So let's say we've got moms and dads watching who might hear from their son or daughter who's of the right age. I'm thinking about joining the military. Do you have any wisdom for those moms and dads? Is this something they should support? Is this something they should discourage? What's the wise thing here?
Oh, first of all, it's a great question.
Yes.
And second, the Department of Defense has recognized that better decisions are made when parents are involved in the decision-making process. You might sometimes see ads today for the military where the teenager's asking mom or dad for help. My advice is for a parent is do some research. One of the things that's stunning to people that are on the Department of Defense is there's almost as many military occupational skills or jobs in the military as there are in the civilian world. It is stunning at how many specialties there are.
Okay.
Of all the service branches and how the microcosm. So, I mean, one of the big things the military's been really recruiting to in the last 5 years is cybersecurity. I mean, I mean, just take that as an example. Those career paths, the training, the certificates they get are recognized by industry. You don't even need a 4-year college degree. You could do a short tour, pick up 5 or 6 of these cybersecurity certificates, and probably in your early 20s you make $100,000 a year in the civilian world. And meanwhile, you're fighting an enemy who's out there globally on the internet, and you're not right on the front line in harm's way. You know, I mean, even my own mother, my brother went to the Naval Academy, flew jets. Wow. But she was sad when I joined the Army because her father was in the Army in World War II, and she just inherently thought it was going to be a dangerous occupation. It's okay for my brother to go fly jets, but if I was going to be a solder, like, forget it.
It's Navy. They don't really fight anyway.
No, count it. So we need all our brothers and sisters.
Military humor.
I'm totally kidding. It's a joke.
Thanks. No, but I think that don't brush it off. The other thing too is, when it comes to the Guard and Reserve, I grew up 33 years in the Michigan Army National Guard. But 2 combat tours, 4 deployments, this, that, the other thing. It's not 1 weekend a month. No. But you can give as much to it or get as much out of it as you want to. And so there's some people that I'm not sure I want to go on active duty, I'm not sure I want to do this.
Sure.
Research it, ask questions. I find myself talking to the sons and daughters of friends of ours who are of that age, and don't be afraid to ask somebody who served for advice.
Yes.
And I probably on average 1 to 2 youth, teenage, early 20s a month, just giving them advice or telling them and coaching them. If you want to go to a service academy, do your research, I'll give you some background, that kind of thing. But it's all about information and that. But there's a lot you can. And if the choice is you don't want to serve in uniform, there's other government service that you can do that is very rewarding as well.
And so let's say this: I come to my mom. I want to join the Army, and we look, and I go in, and I get my some cyber. We probably don't say cyber warfare.
Occupational.
Okay. And now I finish my 4 years as a general rule.
Typically.
Okay.
There's different contracts.
I head off to the civilian world to make my fortune. What about now? What if I get sick? Does the Army still take care of me, or am I done? My 4 years is done. You're done.
So
how does that work?
So the Army, in particular, all the service branches have programs for Soldier for Life.
Okay.
Once you do a 4-year active duty tour, you're not going to accrue benefits like health benefits and things like that.
Okay.
But with a active duty retirement, 20 years of active duty, or if you do 20 years in the Guard and Reserve, good years, you'll qualify for later in life for TRICARE. So, for instance, I'm a gray aged veteran, so I'm not drawing a federal retirement at this time, but at age 60, or 59 actually, I'll qualify for federal medical benefits for my wife and I.
Nice.
And there's different benefits that come with each package, but for instance, if that same soldier joined the National Guard or Reserve, the reserves, there are some benefits that go along with that,
Okay.
And you'll get a physical, you qualify for dental or reduced, that kind of thing, and they'll make sure you stay fit.
Well, it's funny you mentioned about retiring.
Yeah.
Or I don't. We have our first question, which is General Stone. That's you.
That's me.
Okay.
Yes, that's me. It's not Bill.
Do you have
It's
any?
not
Do you have any suggestions for knowing when it's time to get out and become a civilian, especially for Guard and Reservists?
Okay, so here's my rule of thumb. If you're in the Guard or Reserve and you don't like it, start asking questions. Like, what are my options? We see it all the time in the Guard and Reserve that sometimes the recruiters recruit to a geography. The units are on front, that kind of thing. And that's a specific military occupational skill. So and sometimes, God love recruiters, but they don't always give all the information to the recruits, and that's hence seeking information. So, there's a long history of combat arms infantry in the Flint area. A lot of those young soldiers get disenchanted. It's not what they signed up for. It doesn't, fit their life. But ask yourself, how far are you willing to commute? A regular job, and what are my options? Because you should have fun with it. You should enjoy it. You should do that. But for me, it was easy. I used to be super fit, and my body was breaking down. I was really near the peak of where I could go and rank. But for me, it was. I wanted to continue to serve, but I knew it was time to go when I was, my knees were giving out. I couldn't run anymore. Things along those lines. But But here's the thing, if you're beyond 10 years in the Guard or Reserve or a combined amount of time, talk to a counselor, a military counselor, because you've accrued points towards a retirement. Okay. The more days of service, the more points you have.
Sure.
And that goes into a calculator, and you should talk to a financial planner. Because I've seen people do 18 years of service and walk away. They're 2 years short of vesting at retirement at age 60. Wow. And they never talk to a financial planner to realize how much money that is vis-a-vis how much money they have to put away in their savings to actually make up that gap.
Yeah.
And so my advice is do what you can to get to 20 good years. Yeah. Unless you're completely miserable, or unless your body's breaking down. But if your body's breaking down and it's service related, then the VA comes in, and that's where some of those benefits can come in. Like if you've got a bad back, or you, God forbid, had a head injury or something from an IED or something from combat, that's why you need to go to the VA, get checked out, make those claims, because you're going to qualify. I can tell you, I talked to a soldier just recently who's a Desert Storm vet from 1990-91, who had hearing loss his entire adult life, never thought about going to the VA. It was service-connected, but he didn't file. I talked to him in the parking lot. Just walked in. He didn't file until about a year ago. And they gave him like a 10% disability, but he got like a $1,500 check for back pay. But if he had done it in 1991, he'd been getting a check every month the entire time. But it's like those are the things that people don't stop and think about.
Yeah, and I would imagine, and tell me if I'm wrong, if you can. When I go, I'm a soldier now, and I'm thinking, is it time to retire? And when I go in to talk to that counselor, they're not going to try to keep me if I don't want to be there. Like, I would assume that in the best way possible, it's not going to be, well, let me find a way to trick this guy to get more years. Instead, it'll be, if he don't want to be here, we don't want him here.
Well,
is that the?
Well, part of it.
Or
I'll
she,
tell you this.
Excuse me.
Most leaders in the military want to keep their soldiers. I've always dealt with the philosophy that once everybody joins for a reason, everybody leaves for a reason, and it's like and as a leader, you should be spending the time to unlock what the interests of that young soldier or airman or marine are, to figure out what the dissatisfiers are, or what's wrong. And oftentimes it's a pay problem, a chain of command issue. In the Michigan National Guard, they moved to a system about 5 years ago where if you're 90 days out for your contract expiring, they have like a career fair. Like a career fair. So all the commanders walk in once a quarter with all these soldiers and say, if you're decided to come, let me pitch to you what my unit can do for you. And so that it's like
that's smart.
Yeah, and it's really Michigan. It wasn't Michigan National Guard's idea. We borrowed it from another state, but it's a very effective program. About half of those young soldiers didn't even realize what their options were, and they didn't even know that people wanted them that badly. Because it's hard to grow a soldier. It's expensive, and if you've got 4 or 5, 10, 15 years in a career, I mean, even you in communications, I can imagine back when you were working full time. If you had some young 20 or 30 something that was on the team that wanted to go leave, it's a loss. It's hard to replace.
It is.
Yeah. Well, we've got a tough one for you, General, if you don't mind. And I'm not, honestly, I'm not even sure it's a question as much as something where we can honor someone. I honor all veterans on this day. It is a painful day for our family, as my brother, a 19-year veteran, died by suicide in 1991. We never feel that he is honored the same as he did not die in combat. There is shame also to not want to advertise these issues to others. It is so painful for veteran families of suicide.
Well, first of all, I'm so sorry for your loss.
Yeah.
Mental health is a big deal.
Yeah.
Mental health in the military, we're doing a much better job today than we did, say, in 1991 in awareness. But I can tell you, I'm a huge advocate, very vocal with all the soldiers I ever commanded, that no matter, it doesn't matter what your rank is or your position or title. People, very successful people, and I'll say myself, sometimes have struggled, mental health, depression, or other issues. And what I've learned later in life is you've got to have a network. You've got to ask for help. And we do a lot better job today in the military, training people for those signs. I'm sure you in your role have a lot of training and you experience, and you can see it and spot it. And we've got to circle down on that, but there should be no shame whatsoever in that. And mental health and mental injuries are very, my wife ordered a book on this just the other day for me, because I'm trying to understand, because the mental health actually affects the physical health.
Oh yes.
And then of course it spreads, and you have the family and friends and issues. So I'm very saddened to hear that. Suicide is a very painful thing. It is something that's very acute in the military. Mm-hmm. And I don't think there's a magic solution to the problem of suicide, other than everybody has to contribute and help, and there's lots of helplines out there. But try to route somebody to a professional. Try to route somebody to Father Joe, or route them to somebody to get help. But it is a very tough topic on Veterans Day. And
there's no shame in needing help. We all need help. And, you know, allow me to say I'm so sorry and thank you for your story. And we'll make sure today to pray for all of our veterans who struggle with suicidal impulses, with all of the substance abuse. Oh, God, yeah. And then, by the way, if you don't mind a personal note, I wanted to thank the Lord for all my boys from Lansing Catholic who served. I was thinking of Paul Back, Derek Gutty, Mike Gutty, Joey DiGiovanni, and Matthew Tripp. Those are the ones I can think of right now. Thank you, guys. I'm so proud of you, and I'm proud that I get to tell people I was your priest. And I thank you for your service. We've got in there Marines and Air Force. I think I've got it right. And Navy. Tripp was Navy. And I can see his face. One of our boys was at West Point. Yay. So just a second, your name's gonna come to me. Kid was a heck of a halfback. So thank you guys, and thanks to my dad who served as well, and my Uncle Ray, and my mom had a million brothers in the military as well. Hey Bill, we got one for you. Do you know how many veterans' remains continue to be found? Are they still finding remains, be it Vietnam or Korea?
Yes, to answer your question, and my memory is fading here. Joe Michler, the president of the McFarland Park, mentioned this morning that there are 70,000 Vietnam veterans still mercy. MIA. World War II is even triple figures.
Yes.
So it is, and as the general was describing to us before we went on the air, it is a very difficult and intricate process,
sure.
as evidenced by Corporal Wright. I mean, look, it took 70 years, and thank God for the fact it was his sister's DNA that made the match.
Isn't that something?
Because, and I'll be very respectful, but to drive home that point, when you look at the video and his remains are coming off the airplane, it was a container that big.
Yeah.
So you can imagine the degree of difficulty
certainly.
in trying to. But yes, there are thousands of soldiers MIA.
Yeah. Thank you, Bill. General, we got another one for you. Yeah?
All right.
Could you tell us this? So we got this one. My son is a freshman at West Michigan Aviation Academy in Grand Rapids. He wants to be a pilot in the Air Force. He is working toward his pilot license by senior year, and he is a member of the Civil Air Patrol. Nice. I was just doing that quote. Do you have any advice for the lad?
Well, research. So you've got the Air Force active duty, you've got the Air Force Reserve, and you got the Air National Guard. So if you're from West Michigan, we have a wing in Battle Creek, Michigan, but they don't have any flying missions there.
Okay.
Most of the flying missions in the National Guard are at Selfridge. You've got the KC-135 refuelers. You get the A-10 Warthogs there, and they've been fighting to get an F-35 wing there.
Yeah.
So there's opportunities.
Really?
Yes, they've been on a short list. They have not been selected yet, but if the F-35 program does continue in out years, Michigan is on the list. So so there's options there, but again, research, and ask questions, and I'd be happy to route your son to somebody that can help answer some questions, but it's not one size fits all. So I'm not trying to pitch the Air National Guard or the active Air Force, but the other thing too is there's the Army's got aviation programs, so that we've got a C-12 wing out of Lansing, so we've got some pilots.
I did not know that.
Yes.
I thought it was just Navy and Air Force.
So we've got the twin engine, the C-12.
Okay, that's a monster.
The National Guard. It was small. It's real small. The C-12.
I'm thinking C-10.
Yeah.
Is it?
C-5 Galaxy probably is.
That's what I'm thinking. My brother. Okay.
Yeah, but you've got in Rotary too. I mean, Grand Ledge, Michigan, has got a Rotary asset in the Michigan Army National Guard. So you've got lots of opportunities there.
Sure. As a side note, true story. in, I think it was July, I went on a vacation, and my cousin has a house in Mears, Michigan, Mears.
Yes.
And she had this big old deck that protruded out toward the lake. So if you spit, you could hit the lake, right? I mean, we were way up. We heard the sound of the second coming of Jesus, right? And I ran out there and I got film of this. 5 warthogs, right? I mean, that's my favorite. I know they're the ugliest thing in the world, but my gosh, I think they're beautiful.
Yes, they are.
And we saw 5 of those guys. And there was about a 3 to 5 second pause between them. They were heading somewhere, right? They were going north. And they were low enough where like my body shook from I mean, it was, I can't even, I was in awe. But then we saw so I had the number wrong. What is the huge transport, C5?
C5 Galaxy.
We saw one. The next day, one of them, we think, because it was the biggest airplane I've ever seen in my life, and it had that huge booty with and Jeff was there, and Jeff Rose, he knows airplanes really well, and he was like, we're not going to see that in flight again. Odds are, I've seen a warthog in flight before, but he was way up. These, I could go on, but sorry.
Picture if you can, me growing up, and the active runway for Westover Air Force Base, the act was less than a mile from my house.
Wow.
So here's Bill in high school with his buddies. We're laying on, almost nightly, laying on the hood of a car in the middle of the night, the B-52 bombers painted in black. All you felt was the earth rumbling out of nowhere. All of a sudden, these big 2 white lights coming at you. We could almost reach up and touch the landing.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, so I relate to your experience.
Yeah.
It's just an incredible experience.
It puts the fear of God in you.
Yeah.
And humans made that. Like, I don't mean a bunch of humans made that. And it's so funny, I said to, when I was telling my nephew, he goes, well, what do those do? I went, kill tanks. We made an airplane, and what's his job? To kill tanks, right? I mean, that's just nuts. Did you ever see, so may I ask what year you're talking? Would you have seen, like, I remember reading about, they had a plane called, I think, the Wild Weasel? And they were really fast. Am I saying this right? They were planes that were supposed to catch the radar signal in Vietnam. Their job is just to go fast, get caught on radar so they can spot where the missile, I'm probably saying it wrong.
I'm not familiar.
I bet you I'm saying it wrong. But these cats were nuts. I read
pretty
a
much
chapter
they're all
of it.
nuts.
Oh, yeah. But literally their job is get caught and then outrun it. And then artillery or somebody knows where to drop a crap load of boom. Right, wherever the missile batteries were.
Well, to show you how crazy, and again, all these memories come running back. I actually flew an F-16.
Yeah.
Really?
With the Thunderbirds. You'll love the story, General. It'll be quick. We're up, and it's the 2-seater.
Yes.
And this pilot of the Thunderbirds is showing, and he's from Grand Blanc on top of that.
Oh, the real
He's
Thunderbirds?
showing me, he's showing me all the maneuvers. I did not get sick. And now he's saying, I'm looking for this big stick to control the aircraft. And he's going, look on your left, Bill. And it's a little game. It was a little switch. He says, turn it to the left. And all of a sudden, do it again, Bill. So I'm having fun now. He says, bring me back up. So we're horizontal. And he says, all right, look up. I looked up. His hands were on the canopy.
Come on, bro.
And he says, it's
all
yours.
yours.
Take it.
That's awesome.
Bro.
That's cool. That is so cool.
So, General, a couple more. How are you doing? You good?
I'm great.
Okay. What percentage of troops are here in the U.S. versus serving in other countries? Do you know?
Oh, good Lord! I do not know the exact answer to that.
Okay.
But I can give you a ballpark here. I think that we have a 1 million person military on active. If you add up all the forces. At the peak of let's go back to the surge in 2007 and 8. In Iraq. I think at the peak we had like 480 or 500,000.
Almost half.
Theater plus other places, but I would peg the number overseas beyond 100,000. I mean, we could maybe do some quick research and get something back.
Are we still in Okinawa?
We're still in Okinawa.
How about Ramstein?
We've really flattened our footprint. I think we're out of Ramstein in Germany. I was stationed in Germany in the mid-90s, and we had concerns all over the place. And we're still in with European Command and NATO in Germany,
Sure.
but our footprint is probably 10% of what it used to be.
I'll bet the Iron Curtain going down just kind of, right?
That was a big part of it.
Yeah, okay. I have another one. Yeah, you all right?
I'm great.
Okay.
I'm good. Worried about Bill.
No, Bill has been sipping bourbon all morning, so he's fine.
Okay, that's good.
I am.
Yeah, Bill's feeling great. My brother served in Iraq. When his time was done, he was given what I understand was a 2-week decompression time before sent back into the civilian world. I have seen my brother's struggles and others as well. Do you think this will change, or has it changed? I always feel like 2 weeks to adjust to civilian life compared to the years of service is not enough time for combat soldiers. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Okay, so first of all, for most deployments to Iraq, and I did Desert Storm and I did the surge in 07, 08, the longer you serve, we went to a program during the mid-2000s where Guard Reserve we'd activate it would be a 400-day order. So if the plan was a year on the ground, and in a year of active duty time, you accumulate 30 days leave. So one of my frustrations is you start at home station, you go to a mobilization station, you go downrange, you come back, you go to the demobilization station, and then you take your military leave. So park that for a second. Active duty would just leave from their base, go downrange, come back, and maybe they would get a pass or take leave. My frustration with the system is depending on the type of unit and the type of service, it is not enough time. And so there's got to be, we need to recognize that, because let's take active duty for instance. I saw many a soldier go to Iraq with a division or a brigade. They would come home, and it was time for them to rotate to another unit, and then that unit was going to Iraq or Afghanistan.
Oof, that's rough.
And so you end up with, and then we had another population in the Guard and the Reserves especially, who would go on a deployment, 400 days, not have enough time to decompress or have, or really get their head together.
Yeah.
And then they wouldn't have a job, and then they would volunteer to go to deployment with another unit.
Yeah.
And so we were very concerned about the mental health aspect. But I can tell you, no, it's not enough time. And there's more than once when I was younger coming off deployments where I really wished I'd taken more time and had the ability to take more time. But everybody's got to put food on the table and get back to work and just kind of put it behind you. So no, it's not enough time.
And I do want to also, if you don't mind, thank Father David Reimschneider. He's one of the priests in our diocese that I know of is the only priest we have who had combat. He was a ranger as well in Afghanistan and Iraq. So thank you to him. If you don't mind, I'd like to tell you kind of a neat story. It starts tough, but God is so good. If you don't mind another story. When I was at MSU, we had a large number of Iraqis that kind of flooded our community all at once. And they were Catholic, Syriac Catholic. And they got here because they helped our Marines. And they helped our combat soldiers over there, in different ways. And one of the women I talked to was the only person left in her family that they got caught helping. And she talked about all these Marines converged on her house, and she saw a couple of them die just to get her on a chopper and get her out, and she was the only one who made it. And she loved America for that. Like, she couldn't believe all of these boys. So, 4 months later, an MSU student visited me who had been in Afghanistan 2 weeks before in combat. And he was having a tough go, knew he needed help, so we took a walk. And he was like, look, I check in VA, I'm not, like he kept saying, I'm not crazy. I just, no, I get it, Chief, we'll take a walk, right? So we take a walk, I'll never forget this. We were on Charles Street. And at the time, the fraternities were doing something, and it involved slapping two pieces of wood together. And this is a true story. The first time it happened, before my brain processed that noise happened, he had me on the ground and was kneeling on me and looking around. I mean, and then he just bawled. And I hugged him, and so in the end, he checked in with me a lot. We went for walks, we did this. Well, one day, and it's no kidding, there was a function where a lot of the Iraqis were going to be there to give a little presentation, and to they were getting help to settle, and the good people, devout Catholic. Well, if they were Catholic, they were bleeding for it back then. That same day, when I was on my way to this celebration, this Marine calls, and I says, well, Chief, I'm going to a function. And he said, well, I'll go. I'll drive. All right. And I didn't know how to say it. I just go, there's going to be a crap ton of Iraqis there, bro. And he was like, all right, I'll stay in the truck. Okay. So he drives me there. And he's fine. Again, he just needed someone, in his words, he could be ugly with. Right? So we get there. I get out. He's going to stay in the truck. He's got my phone. You get in trouble, you call me. Sitting there, and I'm talking to this woman, right, who I told you about. And I look, and he's coming in the room. I'm like, oh. And I said, well, let me introduce you. And then when they saw each other, he was one of the boys. And he knew her face, and she knew his face. And they never left each other's side the rest of the night.
Wow.
And they hugged and they cried. She thought he was dead. He said, I had my vest. She said, I remember hearing him every time. And it broke ribs, but it didn't kill him. Of course, he had his flak jacket or whatever we call it now. He never called me again. He was at their house for dinner about every other night.
Wow.
And I'm sorry. He's doing great.
It's awesome.
He's a baker now, right? He makes pies, and how cool is that?
It is amazing.
I think if I live to be 100, I'll remember, like, literally just, hey, this is, and then, bam, they were running and crying and hugging, and.
But I think, Father, you just tapped into something obviously very, very significant, and I think that there's, I think, a lack of awareness of the selfless service and sacrifice, not that our veterans give not just to our country, but to total strangers and civilians in foreign nations. The amount of goodwill that happens on the ground, risking their lives for total strangers, not even just an American, but some total stranger who's a victim, like she was. And I can't tell you, I could tell you thousands of stories on the ground where soldiers, airmen, Marines risk their lives on a regular basis just to do the right thing. And I just, for those that don't have a positive perception of the military for whatever reason, I just ask you to kind of open up and hear stories like this, and the goodwill, and there are angels everywhere.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No.
I thought I could tell that story without getting whatever. But
Carrie, do we have time for one more story?
Launch the missile.
Because I think I'll let you grab your composure.
No, please.
And I have a story, and trust me, this will all tie in together. During yesterday's show, if I recall, you mentioned, I wouldn't say critical, but mentioned how there are members of the clergy who get irritated during Mass when squeakers start crying and families and all that. All right, I'm going to tell a story, and we'll come complete circle. This is pre-Vatican II in my parish back home. Newly ordained priest, first sermon, talks about this priest who is delivering his homily, and there's a kid and mother sitting up front, and the squeaker is crying and then laughing and causing a distraction, and Father's doing best he can to stay focused and deliver the homily, and the kid is acting up and acting up. So finally the mother has had enough of this. She picks up the squeaker and goes toward the back of the church to get out. And Father's, my young lady, there is nothing to worry about. He is not bothering me. And the woman turned around and says, you're bothering him. That priest.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
That priest eventually became the headmaster of what is the equivalent of Powers Catholic in my school. He was my headmaster.
Shut up. Okay.
And I'm going to look to the general here too, because his nickname was Major Mara. He was a major in the reserves. Major Mara's military mass at 7 a.m. Altar boy could not keep up with the Latin. He was done in 27 minutes and out the door.
McChurch.
Do you think he's got a career in the military as a major? Major Krupp?
Yes. Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I know a priest who underwent SEAL training. And he said he did it because he said, I don't know what it is, but a vast majority of SEALs are Catholic.
Wow.
And he said they want confession and they want mass, but they're always in places where you can't send a priest, right? So he says, I'll do the training. He did it. That I know of, he's the only Catholic priest who completed it, the SEAL training.
Wow.
Yeah, because then he could go with them. Because there was no way in heck they were letting him go anywhere near where they go.
Well,
you know.
on that note, within the military, there's chaplains, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
Chaplains' assistants. I would say, I'm ballparking here, about half the chaplains' assistants that I know that are recently, become chaplains' assistants were former combat soldiers. They chose to continue to serve.
Them. Jesus bless them.
Wow. They chose to continue to serve, but they didn't want to be a trigger puller anymore. And it was their way to give back.
That's amazing. Amazing.
You're a jerk.
Sorry.
Congratulations,
Bill,
General. It's not very often.
Yeah, no, it's just...
Bill got him to laugh, and I did that.
It's sacrifice is everything. Like that, I say this, and you're sick of hearing it. Evil can't create, right? That's the devil's limitation. His limitation is that he's limited to power, right? He can't create. He can pervert. He can destroy, and corrupt, and that's why he is powerless against sacrifice. Right? That is why sacrifice is the most powerful tool in our human arsenal against him. And so much of it, like even my dad, and he'd hate it but here it is, he set his life on hold for 2 years. At a time when we just finished our second war in a very short amount of time, and we're knocking the door on a third, right? And but it was right to do. And that kind of sacrifice, this boy taking a lot of hits for an Iraqi gal, the men who, the damage, and they knew the damage they inflicted was right. I can't inflict it anymore. So I'm going to attach myself to the people who help the people. I just can't. So I'll shut up. We're going to pray.
Yes.
And if during prayer Bill starts screaming and his head spins in circles, I'm going to recommend we leave the room.
Okay.
Yeah,
I promise I won't vomit.
Yeah, here, just hold this. All right. Thank you, brothers. Okay. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Okay, Jesus, thank you for the million men and women who right now are serving our country, either here or far away. We thank you for all of those in the past who have served us. Thank you for their courage. Thank you for their sacrifice. Thank you for their life and their love, and thank you for their families who stood with them. Jesus, fighting evil gives wounds, and What we ask now is for all combat veterans or all veterans who are struggling with mental or emotional health, please heal them. Please heal them. Show them the innumerable things available to help them and be with their families, Lord. And for those who have died by their own hand, oh Jesus, come to their rescue and bless their family with peace. Keep our country safe in your loving care. We love you, Lord. We trust you. And may Almighty God bless you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much, you beautiful people. Thank you, my beautiful brothers. I will see you, crazy people, tomorrow. I had to do that because I didn't do it yesterday and someone called me out. When we do our question and answer from a brand new location here in my studio. Wow. Yes. Thanks, guys. God bless. Is it over?
No, it's never over.